Hello! Today I'd like to share some tips on how to succeed in Oxygen that you might not be aware of. I hope you'll find them as useful as I have in mastering the game. Every map has 3 types of water: lagoons, rivers and the sea. Lagoons and rivers are affected by frost and drought, and any building on them will shut down when that happens. But the sea is not affected by any of that, so you should concentrate on building on the seashore if possible. Early on you can only do that for fishing docks. The ideal arrangement at the start is to put water purifiers on lagoons and fishing docks on the sea. Save the rivers for the submarine bays and turbines for power. But as you progress, you'll unlock the wave generator, which as you might expect is the best power generator, and the plastic collector, which is the only renewable source of plastic. You'll research a water desalinator so you can also get water from the sea, regardless of weather. So as you might be able to guess, long term a lot of your population will be working on or near the sea, so it's not a bad idea to plan ahead and build your housing and community structures close to the seashore. Buildings don't cost anything until the materials to build them get moved to the site. Take advantage of this to test the placement of buildings. So for example, when you place in water purifiers in lagoons, you want to squeeze in as many as possible. Pause the game and fiddle around to see how many you can put down. You can pause the buildings you don't want right now to stop them being built, and when you do want them, you can unpause them to start construction. You obviously can't do this for buildings you haven't researched, but one of the post-release patches made it so that you see how large buildings are. And if you want, you can also do some test games with all text researched to play around. Each map starts with a bunch of locations you can scavenge for different types of goods. But you can only scavenge so much, so this is only useful in the very early game. What you want is long-term, renewable sources of materials. This is where mines come in. They never run out, and on top of that, you get more material than from scavenging. But they take their inputs from mines, so factories making metal sheets use metal ingots from the mines, and gears require metal sheets as input. Same with bricks, you use stone to make them. You want to build at least one mine for coal, stone, and metal as soon as possible, because it takes materials to build them, and if you put them off for too long, you might find that you can't because you ran out of materials. Building them early is especially important on hard difficulty, because you start with even less materials that you can scavenge. One thing to note is that plastic can only be scavenged until you discover the plastic collector. Use plastic sparingly until you've built it. Oxygen is a game about staying alive during adverse weather conditions. This goes especially for windstorms. When the winds pick up, your power usage doubles, and your population can get sick when their oxygen tanks run out. There's the option of powering your buildings, but unless you're playing on easy, it's not likely that you'll have enough generators to keep everything powered during a windstorm. And as your population grows and storms get longer, power will become more and more difficult to maintain. The solution is to shut down all buildings that are not critical. Some buildings like homes always draw power, but pretty much every other building can be shut down. Stop all scavenging, stop research and scanning, stop manufacturing. The only things you should be powering are homes and coal mines to keep up your power supply. If you can spare the power, community buildings like schools are an option, but if you're running out, shut them down too. Unfortunately, your people will still use community buildings like playgrounds and cafes, so you might need to power them when summer goes in. The ideal situation is to live off the stores of food and water you've saved up for this situation. But keep in mind that your people can get sick while traveling too, so even if you power a coal mine, your people might still get sick while moving to and from the mine. So minimize how many people are working and make sure you have a clinic at least. One option to save power is to have it shut down until someone gets sick. Everybody else should be unassigned, which means that they'll sit nice and safe around the oxygen generator. An extra tip is that people on expeditions don't need oxygen, so it's not a bad idea to scan during normal weather and then send them out when the weather gets windy. But keep in mind that you need to have enough supplies for the trip back too. As I mentioned in the last point, homes always draw power, and more advanced homes draw more power. This means that as your population grows, the amount of power generators you need grows by that much, especially if you take into account that windstorms double your power requirements. Early on you'll need more people, but once you reach the point where you've got enough people to mine, manufacture, and research, while still being able to feed them, then you want to slow down how fast you grow.
Nice to
There's a
meet
few
you.
ways to gain more people. One is to have people be born. They can come by a submarine, and you might discover them during expeditions. You can't control who joins you by a submarine. You can leave them homeless until they leave, but that is not good for your score and the people's morale. And while they're there, they also waste you food. The same goes for expeditions. There is the option of rejecting people you find, but that lowers your morale, so it's generally good to always accept them. But you can control how fast people are born. Different homes have different fertility ratings, and the worst ones are the container you can build at the beginning and the apartment that you unlock last. The container also has the advantage of drawing the least power per person, so one strategy is to stay with containers until you research apartments. That way you reduce your power needs while still containing your population. Pun definitely intended, by the way. Trees have the special benefit of creating a clean air bubble around them, as long as you assign someone to look after them. This means you don't need to power buildings in the bubble during windstorms. You start each map with several trees, and exploring off-site locations can give you more and better types of trees. The game's been patched to allow you to remove and replant trees, so you should take advantage of that to place trees for best effect. Ideally you want to place trees around buildings that draw the most energy. If you use upgraded homes, then they're one of the best candidates because, as we saw earlier, homes are always powered, and that can save you a lot of energy. It might not be worth it for container homes, but it's definitely worth planting trees around apartments. Production buildings for food and water are also strong candidates. In the early game, if you put a tree around fishing docks on the seashore, you'll have a guaranteed supply of food regardless of the weather. Water desalinators also get you the same advantage, but of course you have to research them first. That way you won't have to stock up on as much food and water for when the weather gets bad. If you have extra trees, then powering research and scanning buildings is not a bad idea, because they don't need any inputs, and the more time people are manning them, the more benefit you get. Mining and manufacturing buildings are also an option, but the issue is that you might not have the warehouse space for the products, and usually they need goods from mines. Unfortunately, you can't control where mines are, so it might not be possible to keep mining during storms. Tasks are a nice little source of confidence score and goods, if you can complete them, of course. The problem is that they sometimes require you to construct buildings, and sometimes those buildings can take up quite a bit of resources. Because the tasks are timed, there's a good chance that you won't be able to produce enough material in time to complete the task. This is made worse by the fact that materials are only delivered in chunks of 15, and you can't force early deliveries. To make sure you can comfortably fulfill those tasks, it's a good idea to always have a couple of hundred of each material in stock. This is another reason why focusing on mines is so important. All goods have to be put into and taken out of warehouses. That means that one of your workers has to stop work and physically shift the goods around. You want to place your warehouses in sites where they'll minimize travel time. So for example, if you have fishing docks on the seashore, you can place a warehouse in between the docks and the canteen. That way the dock workers don't have to go all the way into the town, while canteen workers don't have to travel as far to get the fish. You can also disable and set limits for individual types of goods. So if you put a brickworks near to a stone mine, then you want to only allow the nearest warehouse to stock stone and brick, so the workers at the mine and the brickworks don't have to travel across the map for the goods. So for most goods, you want to restrict them to the nearest warehouse, and of course place buildings that use those goods near to that warehouse. Food is slightly different though. People will go to a nearby canteen to get fed, and that will give them a small morale boost. But if that's not possible, then they'll go to a warehouse instead. So it's not a bad idea to allow all warehouses to stock some food and water. You can also lower the limits to make sure all warehouses get some of each. The idea is that your workers shouldn't have to travel too far to get fed or deliver goods. The game has a variety of different foods you can provide for your people. All food has the same nutritional value, so the only difference is in how much effort it takes to make it, and what products you can make from them. Early on, fish is your best source of food, especially if you follow my advice and build your docks on the sea. You can also scavenge canned fish, but they're used during expeditions, so it's best to save them for that. Later on, you'll unlock potatoes. There's no difference between eating fish and potatoes. Aside from potatoes needing water to grow them, both count as one item of food. Generally speaking, it's best to stick to feeding your people with the one type of food. This is because you can research better efficiency for your buildings, and if you keep researching the one type of food, you get more food for the same amount of research points. So in my case, I stick to fish and fishing docks. Do whatever you need to do to complete tasks that need other foods, but fish are the main course for my people. Focusing on fish is also good because you make canned fish from fish, and you need those for expeditions. Later on, you can unlock processed foods like French fries and fish stew that will be more efficient than just fish or potatoes. But if you invest research points in making your fishing docks more effective, then fish can carry you a long way into the game. To generalize on the point about researching fishing upgrades, you should be researching and scanning as much as possible. Both require time to bear fruit, especially scanning for new locations. Tasks will often require you to research new technologies, so it's important to get ahead of the game by having a nice stock of research points. In the early to middle game, keeping a few hundred or around 1,000 research points is a good idea. Use any spare points to research important new techs, especially the ones that allow you to produce materials. You want to make sure you can provide yourself with metal and stone, as well as any products like metal sheets, gears and bricks. If you don't have a reliable source for these, you lose the game pretty quickly. Extra points should go towards unlocking new power sources and making food production more efficient. The turbine to draw power from rivers is an important milestone. It doesn't work during droughts and frosty days, but you should be able to rely on battery and coal during those times. But the important point is that they work during windy conditions and don't have to be manned. Windstorms are when you really need every bit of power, and turbines will be key for a long time. Improving the efficiency of fishing docks is also very important. Water purifiers usually work pretty well, but you need lots of fish to both feed your people and to make canned food for expeditions. Speaking of expeditions, scanning is an even longer term investment than research. There's 44 locations to discover, and each takes quite a bit of time to be found. On top of that, it's more efficient to discover a bunch of locations and send one expedition to explore a bunch of locations close together before they come back. That will save you both supplies and time. So ideally you want to spend as much time scanning to discover as many locations as possible. It will take a lot of time, but if you manage to find trees or new techs, it's well worth it. So that's 10 tips that I've found very useful in playing this game. I hope they'll also help you thrive in the toxic winds of oxygen. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.